it definitely sucks, but it's a process. It happens, and the best you can do is just try to recover and get out there as fast as possible.
Welcome back. It's another edition of the Enough Said program. My name's Dan Barreiro, joined as always by Justin Gaard and an enthusiastic, new and improved version
with a new lease on life
of Lori Fisher.
The latest lease on life.
I'm grateful for every day that I have.
What do you? Don't turn yourself into a Hallmark card.
Come on, Reese Witherspoon. Come on, Glennon Doyle.
God.
Let's move
I
on
like both
here.
of them.
Oprah Winfrey.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know what's wrong with finding joy in life. Maybe you two need to find some
You
more.
sound like you're in a
because
trance.
It sounds
You
phony.
don't even sound like you. You sound like you've been hypnotized. What happened to Lori Fisher?
And if you keep repeating
I celebrated a birthday, and I'm glad you guys finally remembered at about 10 p.m.
It was late, I admit. But did I get in under the gun?
Monday night. We got you.
Isn't it better to have birthday wishes all day?
I suppose.
That was my plan. I didn't want to get to it too early.
They get lost early in the shuffle.
Yeah.
The people that wake up, check Facebook, and send out 400 happy birthdays.
Did you like your gift?
What about the gifts?
Did you like the gifts?
I got great stuff. I haven't seen gifts from you two yet. But that's okay.
Well, just be prepared.
We can do it after the show. We got to move on, though.
You really do sound hypnotized. I'm worried.
You're
not the same Lori, but let's see if we can get
We'll
going
see what
here.
happens. The Vikings have won 4 in a row. Not the same Vikings, right? And without some big names, including we just heard from wide receiver Justin Jefferson. No exact timeline when we're going to see him back. He wants to be 100%. He's been off the team right now with a hamstring injury since week 5. Meanwhile, everyone has Josh Dobbs fever after the quarterback wowed everyone against Atlanta last weekend. The Vikings getting ready to play the Saints Sunday at US Bank Stadium. Dan?
Well, maybe the urgency with JJ has been lessened by the fact that we're 4-0 without him, which is I would not have possibly have predicted. And I think even though it took place, last Sunday, and a lot of people have explored it, we can't ignore it. I mean, it played out Sunday almost like a Shakespearean, it was Shakespearean theater at its best, where it looks like the Vikings are in tragedy mode, right? Cousins is out and done. The guy you groomed all week to give you a shot, he's a rookie, but, who knows what he might do. He gets knocked out of the game, in the was it in the first quarter?
Yes.
It was definitely the first half.
Yep.
And in comes the guy endorsed by Pratt & Whitney Engine Company, Rocket Man, and after a sort of start where you go, well, yeah, this is going to be Shakespearean, all right? This is going to be a Shakespearean sports tragedy. Is what it's going to be.
Yep.
2 fumbles, and he gets sacked in the end zone for a safety. He turns the whole thing around, gets the ball down, 3 points, was it 3 or 4? Whatever it was, they needed a touchdown. So it must have been 4, and drives them all the way down the field using using it all. The Rocket Man uses his head, he uses his legs, he uses his arm, and suddenly the Vikings are transformed, and the Vikings, this story literally was the top National Football League story this past week.
And those last few drives, really all those drives, Kevin O'Connell is playing the role of Lori Fisher on Enough Said, essentially telling people when we need to move on. Here's what you need to do. Here's who you need to look for. This guy's going to be open. He's got 15 seconds, essentially, every huddle to get that out. It's incredible. And O'Connell goes from having a hoarse voice, like you do now, maybe for cheering for the Vikings, who knows, having a hoarse voice and being extremely happy. 2.5 hours earlier, he's crestfallen as they show him as Jaron Hall, the guy they'd gotten ready all week, and he said, well, we're going to kick it anyway. And he's probably thinking, what do we do? This guy just got here. He doesn't know anybody. He's on the sidelines.
He doesn't know the center's butt sweat either.
No,
knows nothing about Garrett Bradbury's butt sweat problem.
And he has to learn about it in the first quarter when it's probably not even that sweaty. And they're doing the cadence. They're doing everything right there on the field. It's incredible. But it truly is why you watch sports, because you never know what you're going to see. For all the predictability and all the betting and the favorites and the underdogs, you never know when this guy, who we may never hear from again, by the way, he might be awful against New Orleans. They've got a good defense. It might be over for the Josh Dobbs honeymoon.
He's not going to get booed, though, is he?
Probably not.
He can't get booed.
Not in the first half.
Well, yeah.
Second half,
right.
maybe.
Second half, maybe.
We'll see. But we should also mention the defense, because that is something that we think is sustainable and we know a little bit more about. In this winning streak, they've been absolutely spectacular. While the offense was trying to figure out everybody's name and who was actually calling signals, the defense was doing a great job of keeping Atlanta out of the end zone. Now, Taylor Heineke, their quarterback, does a great job of keeping both teams in the game, right? That's one of Taylor Heineke's hallmarks. But you got to give credit to the defense for hanging in, and then obviously the ridiculousness there at the end. It was just really an enjoyable, fun. Who really cares where it's going? Although the next 4 seem like they're winnable games, they certainly would be if Cousins was playing.
30.
It was just an enjoyable Sunday.
It really is. As story, it doesn't get, as I mentioned, any richer. And I know in this town there's a belief that if something can go wrong, it will go wrong.
Yeah.
But this was an occasion where a lot of things that could have gone wrong did not. It went the opposite direction. And I do think it gives people something to sort of hang their hat on. It doesn't mean this team's about to make a run for the Super Bowl.
Right.
But at least the door was stayed open in a way that, look, we all agreed it was a good move to get Dobbs because you had to have another option.
Yep.
But, how many of us had really watched all that much of him? Now, though, he's around a better team than he was in Arizona, and maybe he's going to be able to show he's got a little something.
And it is funny how that changes. And a quarterback whisperer. And a guy who maybe he's come to the perfect coach, a guy who can translate everything.
And you keep calling him the Rocket Man. He's the Pastronaut.
I like Pastronaut, too.
I just like the Elton John song.
I like Pastronaut, too. They're both good.
Next up, the Timberwolves are undefeated at home with 4 straight wins, making them 5-0 at Target Center. Anthony Edwards on fire against the Celtics Monday and then against the Pelicans on Wednesday. The Wolves have their first in-season tournament game in San Antonio tonight. Dan?
Well, first of all, you buried the lead again. You made it
again?
Because you made it about, you go with the obvious. Yeah, scoring 38 points is great.
She likes the dunks. She likes the Showtime.
The Showtime stuff's wonderful. But this is all about Stifle Tower. This is about Rudy Gobert. And that's the story early in the season. I feel like when the Timberwolves made that stupendous trade before last season, and it got destroyed nationally, I endorsed it. I think Justin Gaard endorsed it as well.
Yep.
And I endorsed it because I thought defensively the Timberwolves were going to get the guy they're now getting. They did not get this guy a year ago. I don't know if he went to that darkness retreat and that changed everything.
You can't rule it out.
I don't know if he's healthier.
Yeah.
I don't know if he is just more committed to the bit and they're more committed to him. And I don't even know if it's sustainable. That's the other thing. We're way early in the season. But we are seeing a guy who is literally transforming this defense and reminding people that he was one of the great, most influential defensive players of all time in his prime. And suddenly a team that had zero identity, even in making the playoffs last year, has one. We're going to make it tough for other teams.
Right.
We've got some scorers, but we're going to make it tough for other teams. And that's what they have done, historic fashion in terms of the team's history. And now the only question, I think it's a 5-game road trip.
Right.
Let's see if they can translate this to the road. But it is absolutely fun to see. And I think I feel vindicated on Rudy because this is the guy I thought they were going to get last year.
Exactly.
We'll see if it can last.
Exactly. And they're mixing in Naz Reid with the 3 bigs, and you've argued, and you might be right, that he might be a better fit long-term for Rudy Gobert. Carl played better the last game. At least he shot the ball better. There's 2 ways that this derails: injury and mentality changing, right? And don't worry, if the injury thing happens and a bunch of guys get hurt, nothing you can do about it. Right. To me, the mentality thing is the important piece of it, and that's why it's been encouraging that after all of these games, the leader of this group, Chris Finch, has continually said, this is great. Yeah, keep doing it. Keep doing it. 1 game fine, 2 games fine, 3 games fine. Now, do we expect them to hold teams to 40% shooting every night? Of course not. That's not realistic. They're going to have some clunkers in there, but if you can give me, I don't know, what's a good number? 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, where you're given legitimate defensive effort 1 through 5, because you can see Carl, I think, is giving legitimate effort. Anthony Edwards, for the most part, is giving legitimate defensive effort. Yep. Jaden McDaniels, bitter that he wasn't an All-NBA defensive guy a year ago. He's going to do that for you every night. He was great on Jason Tatum the other night. That's the other sneaky part of this whole deal. If the mentality stays the same, or at least close to the same, this team does have a lot of pieces. I mean, this team has a good bench. This team has a couple of really effective offensive players. They have Rudy Gobert. They have Kyle Anderson. And by the way, they have a point guard who hasn't turned it over since I think the first 45 seconds of the season in Mike Conley. So they do have a lot of really interesting pieces that seem to be meshing together. And to me, it's just a matter of how long can you keep this mentality, because it's definitely there.
They're doing what serious teams do.
That's a good way to put it.
Rarely this has been a serious team. I can still remember the time when I was writing a long press row. The Wolves were awful. It's probably they were one of those seasons they won like 17 games.
Yeah.
Out of a break, Charles Barkley walks by, and he said, I think it was with Phoenix at the time, and he looks at us. He kind of doesn't know any of us, but he knows, we're the ink-stained wretches, we're the media. And he says, y'all can't possibly be paid enough to watch this bleep night after night after night. All I want is for that to go away.
Enough
for this
said.
team to be viewed, with having some credibility nationally, and that it's okay to watch the Minnesota Timberwolves now, and they might even try to guard people.
Were you wearing one of those sweet sweaters that we saw on social media?
That was an embarrassing sweater.
Nice. Lori's back.
That I was.
Yeah, salty Lori's back. Zen Lori's gone. Took 5 minutes to get salty Lori back.
Ignore.
Edgy Lori's
I don't have
back.
the sweater anymore.
That would be. Oh, it would be.
It's too bad. It's back in
Look,
style.
the
I'm
sweater
sure.
was one of those sweaters where it had a stripe where it looked like I was wearing like a
Those
Kinda
were nice.
chains
like a
almost from her.
layer,
Almost like a
Hawaiian
tree
layer
skirt.
around. Yeah,
It was like a tree
You didn't
skirt
need to
for
go to
your neck.
social media to see this.
And I had hair, or at least some.
And a mustache.
We didn't even notice that because the
Mustache, yeah.
sweater was so jarring. We didn't even notice the mustache.
The World Series just wrapped up recently, and now we're looking ahead to next season. Unfortunately, it sounds like the payroll numbers for 2024 will be a lot lower for the Twins. They spent $154 million this past season, so no official numbers, just hearing they're going to be lower from last year's record high, Justin.
How do you let the air out of the balloon for 1,000, Alex? That's what I would say. This right here, right? And you nailed it a couple of weeks ago. You saw this coming, and we'll see what eventually ends up happening with the Twins payroll. But it's frustrating to hear. It's frustrating to see these reports. I guess it's not surprising, but it is. If you're a Twins fan and you're annoyed by this, you almost wonder why they went all in the first place. And when I say all in, they had a payroll of 150. I think that 154, I think that put them right in the middle of the pack, which, by the way, I'm fine with. I don't expect them to be in the top 7 or 8 or even the top 10, given some of the big cities and big markets that clearly have no concerns about spending money. Even San Diego, spent a bunch of money a year ago in the offseason. But it's so deflating when you feel like they started to make strides financially. Great trades, getting Correa. He was obviously big defensively, had some big clutch hits there in the postseason. You're paying him $200 million. You bring in Sonny Gray. You've got Pablo Lopez. You've got these pieces that look like you can keep them together, and you can fortify and add, and you're going to win the division. So what's it about? Being aggressive to beat the rest of the teams in the American League. And then this is the message that you're going to send to your fans that finally came back to Target Field, that we're all in with you, especially once you beat the Blue Jays. It's just it doesn't have to be the be-all, end-all here, but to me it just kind of deflates and dampens what was a really exciting opportunistic way to end the season last year.
When your number one goal after coming off a season like that, a second half like that, is to spin and whisper and remind people that our Bally Regional Sports Network deal is a miss and we're not going to get anywhere near the $40-50 million,
right,
then it tells me that you don't get it at this point, because you can do that, but from a business, I would even argue from a business standpoint, it's a really negative and bad message to send. To me, it's like, it's not the fans' problem. Fans, and here's the other thing, you hit on, I think, a really key point here. Twins fans get hammered way too much that, they're idiots. They expect the Twins every year to spend like the Yankees. That's what we call in the business a straw man argument.
Right.
I think most Twins fans, if they stayed around 140, 150 mil, I think, like you, they're saying, well, I get it.
We
They're
understand.
not going to be at $220 million.
Right.
And unfortunately, they get painted with that broad brush of where their expectations are unrealistic. If you win largely with 2 really good starting pitchers, Sonny Gray being one, who's the other guy we
Pablo
just
Lopez.
traded for,
Yep.
and then suddenly admit off the record, behind the scenes, we ain't going to be able to afford Sonny, then what are people supposed to conclude other than, well, they're not going to be as good and they're not going to try to capitalize on what they had going this season. So we'll see. They got time to make a trade maybe, and maybe they'll add a pitcher that way, but I hate the message, and you could see it coming right down 394.
Coming up, Election Day, the Wild, and people's sexiest man.
Whoa. It's kind of sexist.
Welcome back to Enough Said. Democrats saw some major victories in red states this past off-year election day. Abortion rights advocates won big in Ohio, Kentucky, and Virginia. It's a snapshot heading into a big election year with the presidential race on the line. In Minnesota, the state Supreme Court just ruled against a petition to keep former President Trump off the state's 2024 primary ballot. Dan?
Well, the Ohio the constitutional amendment ruling, which was, I think it carried by, I want to say 13 points.
Right.
Something to that
Pretty
effect.
substantial.
in a pretty reddish state, I think is another reminder, and we've talked about it several times on this show over the last, or basically ever since the Dobbs decision, is that it's under that cliche of be careful what you wish for if you're a Republican or if you are pro-life, is that politically speaking, the Republicans are going to pay for it over and over and over again. They were better off arguing whatever they wanted to argue in the point, but having really the Supreme Court to save it from exactly these sorts of outcomes, because that was a stunning statement that means that we're too far past. We're not going to go back in that particular regard. I will add, though, I think the Democrats got to be a little careful about celebrating too hard in terms of what it's going to mean for next year's presidential election, for example, because I still think there's more and more reason to believe, if you look at these polls for whatever they're worth, that there's a lot of Democrats, especially young Democrats, who if Biden
aren't in love with the current president.
It's more 50-50 than you would think among the youngsters. And I don't know how they get out of it. And I know that we've all mocked Dean Phillips.
Yeah.
But Dean Phillips isn't wrong. It's just he might be the wrong vessel. But even some of Obama's biggest
David Axelrod
is basically
among them.
saying, hey, he's got to go. I don't have the answer because I don't know who the guy is who's going to, or person, man or woman, is going to replace him. But that's the reality right now.
Well, it's a scary unknown, I assume, for the Democrats, right? That was the whole Biden magic a couple of years ago, was this is the person that can guarantee a victory over Donald Trump, and no one else could. I mean, how many Republicans in 2016 did we think, oh, this is the person, dust is going to settle, and then eventually Donald Trump's going to be out of the race, and it's whoever it's going to be, it's going to be. That was the reason why Biden was up in the first place. I don't think anybody had the looking ahead is the right word to say, well, Trump's going to come back in 2024 and he's going to have to run again. So I don't think they really thought of it after this election cycle. On the Ohio thing, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think I said it the week of the show, the week of the Roe v. Wade reversal. It's like, you can send it to the states, but be ready for it because it's coming. I mean, just what everybody, I mean, what was it? 75% of people in the country, I think, is what we cited back then, that agreed that women should have the right to choose here. And I mean, I might be inflating the numbers a little bit, but it doesn't appear that way when you see what has happened in some of these other states, as Lori outlined. So we said it at the time, be careful what you wish for, because you send it to the states. States are going to let you know what they think. Now that's, obviously liberal in one instance. You look at Minneapolis City Council, though, I think you see the other thing a little bit, right? We're not quite ready to go as far left as everybody wants to go. So I think both sides, depending on where you want to look, kind of can see that there's a lot of us still in the middle on a lot of things.
Final point, Dan?
Well, it's just it's hard to wrap our minds around this, but we like to analyze instantly and go as if the election's next week. I'm talking about the presidential election.
Right.
And my God, imagine the number of twists and turns we're going to have a chance I hope, to talk about.
Got multiple trials, I think.
Then,
there's just no, there's no way. There's so many things that crises that we might not even know about yet, that are going to end up entering into what I fear is still going to end up being a Biden-Trump bloodbath.
Next up, the Wild made some trades this week, beat the New York Islanders on Tuesday, lost to the Rangers on Thursday. Tonight's Buffalo. Something extra special this week. Lou Nanne called Tuesday's game, got to see his grandson, Vinny Lettieri, score his first goal for the Wild. That was very sweet. Dan?
Yeah, they were in a bad stretch. We started to feel a little better about them when they won the first of those two games in New York. They lose against a good team last night.
The Rangers, yeah.
Kaprizov, I think, continues to sort of be the elephant in the room story. The numbers I have, 4 goals, 8 assists, and he's -8. And, the general manager has said his issue when his head coach started ripping the club and challenging them when they were in that bad stretch was not that we have a talent issue, but that they weren't working hard enough. And that was the message from Evason. We talked about this.
Right.
On the radio, it wasn't talent limitations. But everybody's telling me, they're saying, well, no, Kaprizov, it's not an effort issue with him. Not much else is going to matter if he doesn't snap out of this. And, the betting money is he will, because it's the old, all he needs is 1 game.
Right.
2 goals and 2 assists, and he's back. But the fact is, we're well into the season now where that's the mystery that has to be solved, because really, does the rest of it add up?
None of it.
If he's not a star,
no, none of it.
None of the rest of this is going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about their limitations ad nauseum, right? The one hand behind the back deal. We know none of this matters if Kaprizov isn't close to what you think he's going to be. And I tend to agree with everybody that says this is really the first extended slump that he's had, right? I know he's had a couple of things in the playoffs when he was banged up a little bit. And he was obviously banged up towards the end of one of the seasons that might have affected his production. But if you're asking me to rank like biggest concerns for the Wild, Kaprizov snapping out of this long term wouldn't really be high on that list. Now, he has to at some point, but he's just been so good and so productive that guys like that don't stay in slumps very long. The rest of it, though, we've talked about goaltending. Has been up and down. Obviously, they made a couple of trades this week. There's reasons for that.
Trying to get more physical, bigger defensively.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're trying some things, and that's what I do appreciate about Guerin is he doesn't let things just settle in. If he doesn't like something or how it's going, he does. I don't want to say have a short trigger or a short fuse, but he doesn't hesitate, I guess, if he feels like he needs to shake something up.
Enough said for lightning round. The Gopher women's basketball team opened their season with a new coach, the official debut for Coach Dawn Plitzuweit. The Gophers beat the Long Island University Wednesday night. They play Chicago State on Sunday, Justin.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to learn a ton with the first couple of opponents. Chicago State couldn't quite figure out if they even wanted to have an athletics department a few years ago. Now they apparently do. But
did we run up the score in that opener?
No, they actually struggled a little bit in the second half, but they came out great. They shot the ball well. They've got talent on the team. We all know that. So I'm curious to see with an outstanding resume coach, Dawn Plitzuweit, how far they can take this thing in the next few years, because they're well organized, I can tell you that.
It was announced the Green Bay
UConn, by the way, coming to the barn in a couple of weeks.
Can't wait.
That'll be a big one. That'll be fun.
The Green Bay Packers will host the NFL Draft in April of 2025. Thousands of fans across the country will head to Green Bay. Detroit hosts the one coming up this spring. Do we care, Dan?
I don't care. Guardsy and you might.
I don't really.
You guys are so parochial about, well, why can't we have it here?
Well, it is a little weird.
I could care less.
We're going to be the last team in the NFC North to have it. That's kind of depressing.
Well, there it is. You're admitting you care.
Yeah, I mean, that's a little depressing.
Come on, man.
Detroit, I like Detroit. Detroit's underrated. We're all going to go to Lori's Brothers Restaurant whenever we're in Detroit. Yeah, we'll go there.
Basan.
And I might be going there with Gopher football in a few weeks.
What?
So.
Okay, well, we'll hook you up.
Yeah,
He'll
we'll figure
hook you
it
up.
out.
What is that supposed to mean?
Me? Well, they
Motor
might go to that bowl. That's a possibility.
Oh, boy.
Next up,
I like Ford Field.
Ford Field's cool. The state asked for submissions for a new Minnesota state flag and seal, and boy, did they get some 2,600 designs, some serious and some, let's just say, interesting. A panel will pick 5 for both of them and then submit them to the lawmakers by January 1st. Dan?
I'll put it to you this way. I care about this less than I care about whether we ever host the draft. Yes.
Why did we need a new flag? Did I miss that?
Well, there was some historical, that's fine. But has anybody even seen the flag beyond the fact that, when this whole issue started? I don't know. Have a new flag, it's fine. I couldn't care because I don't think anybody, as I said, who sees the flag? Where is it even
You go
out?
to Mount Rushmore, you got all the state flags.
How about we just eliminate a state flag?
And finally,
don't have a state flag.
The new sexiest man alive. We do this every year. According to people,
sexiest man alive.
You do.
You never do sexiest woman alive.
You want us to vote on that? We'll do a Fox 9 poll on Good Day.
It's Patrick Dempsey. Sure, we can do that. And known as McDreamy on Grey's Anatomy, he's 57. He does have a project coming out, Ferrari.
Looks like he's aging to me.
Yeah, it's coming to theaters in December. He's,
Can we get an updated photo of the young guy? That's not Patrick Dempsey. That's Patrick Dempsey, like mid-90s.
I was going to say.
Can we get a Ferrari?
No,
some Ferrari?
Are you guys afraid to show him the way he looks now?
I honestly think
You're
he looks exactly the same. Sorry.
Oh, that's false.
Doesn't really
No,
age.
you don't.
Enough said.
No, he does. He's a handsome guy, though. Seems like he's got a good personality,
Sweet
too.
Home Alabama.
I know that's important to everybody. He was great in Sweet Home Alabama.
Can't Buy Me Love.
So is your gal Reese.
Let's keep objectifying.
My favorite movie of all time.
Yeah, let's keep objectifying. It's a great message to
send to the kids.
About done.